You said something about how our asteroid belt used to be a planet that got blown up. Do you, can you elaborate on this?
Yes, there are many angles to this. A species or race of all hairless monkeys came from what you consider in our solar system and settled there. There was also conflict involving our cropping the empire. Her, this race traveling there also inhabited your Mars planet. There was a conflict, there was also misuse of technology, or also miscalculation on those hairless monkeys' part. That led to the explosion and deterioration of the entire planet and the destruction to a great degree of the civilization on Mars. There's still life on Mars, much higher evolved than you might be imagining, but still it got affected to a large degree and made areas uninhabitable. It also shifted your solar system's planetary distance to the sun. Some planets getting out of its former orbit. One being smashed into one that was what you consider a Maldek, it's now the asteroid belt, shattering it. There's still large mining operations on what you consider the asteroid belt, trying to find the remnants. Not just minerals, but also remnants of previous civilizations that exist around there, but mostly for precious metals.
When did this event happen that blew this planet up and devastated Mars?
From our understanding on your timeline, about 500,000 years ago, but it's very approximate. The idea of the Mars being devastated was not happening exactly at the same time or immediately afterward. It was just a lead up. Yes, the destruction of the Maldek idea or whatever else you are naming having your cultures was simply the prelude of the Martian catastrophe, but it didn't happen in the same time frame.
That's weird because like the way we think of Mars is that it dried out and became, pretty much lifeless about 4.5 or so billion years ago. So I mean, if it only happened like more or less, what do you say, like 500,000 years ago? I mean, that's changes a lot what we believe about Mars, like 180 degrees. So was Mars inhabited by people on the surface up until like 500,000 years ago?
More than that. It's more like much more than 180 degrees, so to speak, as there's still life on Mars, quite possible. There's not just some water there, there's plant and animal life quite sufficiently. It's just certain regions that became uninhabitable.
Is it on the surface or below the surface?
Yes.
There's life on
there
the
are
surface?
larger inhabitants below the surface, but there are also quite some on the surface. Even people from your own world has built what you might perhaps consider sanctuaries, yes? Domed cities. But they're also what you consider natives on Mars. Some of our species, some of your species.
What are these natives? Like, what do these native beings look like?
As we said, some of your species, some of ours, and some insectoid-like. They're directly associated with us, or the Empire, but they're of a reptilian nature, and those that are of your kind also have some genetic similarity to your peoples, as you have some common ancestors.
You said before that a planet smashed into Maldek. Was this other planet also inhabited by hairless monkeys, and can you tell me the name of it?
Names are irrelevant. Different races and species have different names. Maldek is also just one name for it. There are many others. However, yes, you are touching on reptilian politics, but there is also some that can be disclosed as involves hairless monkeys, rather, that were on the surface of this our planet. Very correct. So, it was also populated by hairless monkeys at the point of impact, some of which found refuge on your Mars planet.
So this other planet that smashed into Maldek, was it inhabited?
Yes.
There
are various timelines and versions to this event. That's why we are currently adjusting different possibilities that could be more relatable to you more than the other. But yes, there are many refugees from other worlds that came with it.
So,
And those that came over there also settled not just on Mars, but also on Venus and later on your Earth. So some of you have heritage from there quite physically.
So this other planet, was it about the same size as Maldek?
It was bigger from our knowledge.
Like just out of curiosity, can you tell me like how the diameters of these two planets compare in relation to Earth? Were they bigger or smaller than Earth?
Maldek, from our perspective, was smaller. The other one was slightly bigger.
I see. Were there surfaces similar to Earth's surface, such as having large oceans and green forests and deserts and stuff like that we have?
Not to the same extent. But they share an atmosphere that were inhabitable by beings such as yourself. But so was Mars and Venus. They changed after the cataclysm, as the event that was the impact also affected the other planets, including your own. Earth needed to be what you consider terraformed after the event.
Can you share any information on how this misuse of technology led to the destruction of Maldek?
Misuse, of course, and interpretation. Their idea is it was also an astronomical event of just a planet having a certain trajectory, but also the idea of pulling planets, the idea of influencing stellar events, causing earthquakes to a certain degree. You're repeating history in certain, not a linear time, also not a cyclic time, but both a spiral time, so to speak. So you're readjusting certain events over and over again. There were also many ships, yes, that miscalculated their trajectory. So simple mathematical error, as you're calling such, yes? A simple mathematical error, not necessarily a moral dilemma. A miscalculation of a trajectory that led to a ship or a blade that was being influenced to fly somewhere else that was intended, to put it most simply.
I see.
But that was all Harris monkey endeavor, not necessarily something the Empire was involved with directly, but also conflict with the Empire over certain stellar bodies, but this was not the reason for this impact. Again, there are various versions of various timelines, and certainly many names for the particular stellar bodies in that direction with the inhabitants.
Can you say when humans first inhabited these planets?
What we can refer to is planetary inhabitation in relation to each other, not necessarily a time frame where you consider numbers if we don't calculate them the same way you are, but we mentioned this previously numerous times, so you will be aware of this, yes? What we can mention is first that the Maldek planet, or what you call it such, was inhabited by certain people that then later settled to Mars, then Venus, and finally Earth, and also back and forth to some degree. This was, however, at least 1 million years ago. It was around 500,000 years ago that your planet was being upgraded.
I see. Okay, now...
There were also people on your planet before refugees came from other worlds. Or sometimes even scientists, or some of those that came to your planet to seek refuge also came to give you genetic updates or scientific updates. But there were also those that evolved through what the Darwin person has termed the theory of evolution. They were just more primitive, and you would likely still live in caves today if it wasn't for the influence from outer worlds, but you would still have what you consider a human population.
I see. Okay, well, the final question that I have for you today, I would simply just like to give you an opportunity to whatever degree you want to, provide a brief summary of the history of Maldek, if you care to. You mentioned there was a conflict between the people on the planet and the Empire. So without treading on inter-reptilian politics, can you tell me anything about how this conflict started and how it played out?
some things, as we previously already mentioned, your touch on reptilian politics and what we can share there is monkey perspective and their influence on it. As far as the conflict with the Empire is concerned, as we briefly touched upon, you're playing out certain events over and over again, and their results were based on there, but again, it's not a timeline and the one we are currently referred to. Yes, as you're aware, different things happen differently on different timelines. Even your own history on your planet Earth, there are various versions. And on one of those, this was a base. Yes? Of the Federation at some point. Of the Empire at another point. And then there was an attack launched, and the throwing in of a plan to hit it on purpose was commenced from either side. That's not really important. It is for inner reptilian politics, but the ideas. A plan was thrown in it also right to the Memburo starship, what it really is. But again, the trajectory of a certain planet coming to your solar system was going to happen either way, but it didn't need to crash in there. Tiamat, for example, is another terming for one of those ships as well as for your own planet before impact of another one. But there are various versions. One of them touching your planet, the other one touching Maldek. The more important things is different ideologies or viewpoints came into conflict and were already in conflict in the Orion Wars, which also affected your solar system. And the Maldek played the most important part during the Orion Wars as far as your solar system is concerned. You were also a two-solar system. You didn't have just one sun, there were two. You're all very well aware that Jupiter has many moons, correct?
Correct.
One of them has a base of the Federation, and the other one has a strong base of the Empire, just as an example. So this stellar body also played a great importance, not just in your what you consider past, but also present. That's something would also direct your attention on if you want to understand the conflict of the Empire and the Federation in your solar system more than the Maldek planet or its remains, which today is just the asteroid belt. Keep always in mind the conflict of different viewpoints of those particular entities. If you want to understand reptilian politics, it's more important than names and dates, as those are malleable on different timelines. However, in this universe, there are general playing out of different frequency ranges. They have been considered light or dark, for example, with many groups shifting over one side and the other, and understanding differences in viewpoints or what you consider ideology is much more beneficial than studying dates on your calendar. Recommendation from KALASK.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Definitely. This raises many more questions about this topic, but I'll have to save it for next time.
The Andromedan system also plays a great importance on the Ariferi side, as well as the base over here that we cannot disclose more about plays on our side. It's not Orion.
I got you.